now we're inside the nose of the Belle, and basically this is the beginning of a whole series of videos where we're going to discuss with Zach here.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would work here or be able to really get the privilege and honor to work on the Belle. I started here and it was already up in position, so a lot of the interior work, the wiring, the oxygen system, a lot of accessory systems, stuff like that.
Yeah. Beginning with the Bombardier, basically the business delivery end of the aircraft. So everyone in here was an officer, right?
In the early part of the war, yes, you would have an officer bombardier. Later in the war, they actually would have enlisted toggleiers that would man the bombardier station. That was when the lead bombers were the ones that were dropping, and they would just toggle their switches off the lead bomber.
Okay. And that references that light at the back we talked about.
Yeah, so when the lead bomber opens up the bomb bay doors, it turns on a light in the rear of the aircraft. When he punches the toggle switch, it turns on another light, and that tells all the bombers in his formation that are following the lead bomber when to open their doors and when to punch their bombs.
But they were still equipped with the Norton bomb sight, even though they were only toggling?
Yes, they were all equipped with the Norton bomb sight.
And then they all had their each individual specialist courses, like an MOS, if you will, in today's terms?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in terms of armament, we've got 450s in the nose here, specific to the Belle.
There were several field modifications, and we're looking at what I would argue is probably the most important one, and that's these 50 caliber machine guns in the nose. Those holes existed for 30 caliber machine guns, and that's what the Belle came over with.
Really?
But those 30s were so useless, being small caliber, that oftentimes the crews didn't even carry them. And the Germans figured out pretty quickly that there was a cone in the front that was not covered well by the other guns, and so they started doing these head-on attacks.
Now that 30 caliber nose, is that a across the board E&F?
It is, yes.
Okay.
So the 30s could sit in the plexi, and the recoil was not so great that it would destroy the plexi. Well, 50s, you can't just stick a 50 in the plexi, it would crack and break the plexi.
Okay.
So there were any number of ways that they modified airplanes to get 50s in the nose. What we're looking at is one of them. Now this particular mod used something that they called spiders, and all they are is it's just reinforcements that attach to the formers on the airplane and reinforce that mount so that 50s could be put in there. There were 200 of these kits made at a place called Langford Lodge, and they were shipped to Bassingbourn, and the Memphis Belle got these modifications actually later in its tour. Most of its tour didn't have these 50 caliber machine guns. And then it's displayed to be as impressive as possible, but typically they would only carry one of these guns in the front, because with two, you can't, only one person is operating the guns, and you can't swing them even if there were two people, because the navigator would cover the cheek guns and the bombardier would cover one of those machine guns in the nose. And to just show how it was, you know, do what you can with what you have. They typically would carry the gun on the left-hand side as you're facing forward. So you have this opening on the right-hand side. Well, one might think you'd have some kind of special cap or whatever. Well, when you look in the outtakes, the way that they dealt with that was just take this big blue rag and just stick it in there and jam up that hole. They used a rag to jam up the open hole. Good, it worked. But that was very important, getting these guns in the front to try and offset those devastating nose attack by the Germans. Ultimately, the real solution came with the B-17G and the custom chin turret that we see on that model.
So, yeah, those two guns out of the nose like that, that is not a factory F6.
Nope. That was done in theater. Now that was done with kits from Langford Lodge that were manufactured in theater. On some other airplanes, we see very crude mountings that were done at the airfields. So that's a little more sophisticated than what we see on some other airplanes at the time.
Talk about basically everything that he has access to specifically to this spot.
So he's obviously got his Norden bomb sight, which has the crosshairs and how he, the Norden bomb sight calculates where his bombs are going to land, because you dropping from so high that they're going to continue to fall. I think normally they drop something about 2.5 miles from their target. So, and then to control his bomb release sequence, down here where this light is, that is your intervalometer.
Yep.
So that controls, if you can, the Bombardier can select to release his bombs in train mode, select mode, or salvo mode. In salvo, they all drop at once. In train, you select an interval with the intervalometer, and you put in your airspeed that can be acquired from the navigator's drift meter, and you select your airspeed and your intervals, and then you put it to train, and you can flip the switch, and it'll drop the bombs in that interval that you've pre-selected for.
So why do the intervals at which the bombs come out matter?
Depending on the target, you would want to get the right spread, and that's calculated pre-flight, and the Bombardier would be briefed on that pre-flight.
Okay. A study was done from November 1942 till December 1943 that studied specifically heavy bombers above Europe for the Army Air Forces, and the study was done for medical support, and with the goal to consider the crew members in the plane most susceptible to both injury from ground, flak, and fighter interceptor aircraft. And the goal of the study was done to look at which places in the plane would be best suited to add additional armor to protect the crews. Once the study was done, it outlined the most susceptible to injury and death positions within the aircraft. Bombardier, of a total of 1,293 crew members injured, 144 of them were Bombardier, putting them at the top 11%, making them pretty close to the top for the most susceptible to injury or death. Further forward, like these controls up here are related to what?
So the red lights are the bomb release and the bomb bay door opens. And then there's airspeed. Those are just dials to help the Bombardier input the right selections.
Okay. And then further forward, we have bomb bay doors open, close.
Yes. So those are your bomb bay door switches, and then up above that little square box with the red flip switch, that is the toggle switch. So he could select, when he's put it on select, each time he flipped that switch, he would drop a bomb. So you could select one bomb and drop one bomb, and
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so take a second to speak on the Bombardier. We're coming on to our bomb run, and he actually flies the plane, right?
Yeah, so the pilot would fly to the IP, called the IP, the initial bombing point, and he would give control of the airplane over to the Bombardier, who would fly it using the autopilot through the Norden bomb sight.
Okay, and then do you know much about the actual controls? Like, how's he actually moving the plane? Is it through dials or levers? Or?
Yeah, there's a series of dials up there that control, basically wherever you move your crosshair, the airplane will drift to accommodate that, and that's done through the autopilot system.
So his ability to actually fly the plane is still limited. Like, he couldn't pull a hard bank or a hard turn through that.
No, it's very slow, very smooth movements that are just through where he's aiming the crosshairs.
Okay, so touching on mechanically, let's talk about how that system actually works. And a lot of people assume autopilot is cutting edge technology, but this is actually old technology. It was around for a long time. So if you can speak on how the system actually works.
It's all electrical. It basically just sends an electrical signal to the autopilot, that tells the servos which direction to move.
Okay.
So,
So we're going to check those out now.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So now we're at the sort of the workings end of the autopilot. Where we are sitting is underneath the pilot and co-pilot. So their controls are right here. And this is essentially where the autopilot system is.
So the autopilot system sits here underneath them, and it's got 4 components to it. It's the gyroscope, an amplifier, a servo, and a dynamotor. Now there are 3 servos in the aircraft. The other 2 are in the back, and they control the rudder and the elevator. This is specifically just for the ailerons.
Okay. That's interesting. So essentially, he's still flying the plane through control line. It's these units here that are adjusting control line.
Yeah, so the servo actually has cables that run out of it, and they physically control the airplane through a series of cables, just like the pilots do.
So that's it for like 1940s. The technology's really a lot more advanced than most people would assume at first glance.
Very advanced. This was one of the first functional autopilot systems in the world.
Wow.
And it was used in mass quantities.
Okay.
Bombs away.